let's stay on politics for a minute. Because we don't just want to be on one side of the fence. We want to objectively look at it from all sides. Let me say that again. We want to objectively look at this thing from all sides. So how about we spend roughly 12 minutes or so discussing Laura Ingraham pivoting from an interview she did with Trump. Now, one of the questions that she was trying to find out is, what is it that you really want to do? I know that Meg the Stallion is twerking over there in Atlanta, and Quavo is walking up there with a blouse to tell y'all how it is that y'all supposed to vote just based off of identity politics. But Trump, I'm curious, can you speak to real issues from real Americans and what they're going through? Because that's what the people really want to hear in real life.
Sad fact, after 4 years of Biden and Harris, more Americans believe the American dream is no longer achievable. Donald Trump says he'll restore that, but how? You've mentioned getting rid of taxes on tips, 10% tariffs across the board, getting rid of most favored nation status for China. There will be a lot of pressure brought to bear against the tariffs question. How strongly, and I think a lot of people in Michigan are listening tonight, and in Ohio and other Rust Belt states, how firmly will you commit to these tariffs?
100%. Look,
And before he answered this, you know why I believe him? Because he's the person that put the tariffs into place right now that actually saved the steel industry, got back people jobs, started the jump starting the manufacturing of jobs, had unemployment at the lowest rate. Americans were thriving 2016 through 2020. He was the person that put into place the tariffs that Biden left into place but could not manage the country effectively enough to make sure that we're not suffering at the hands of the Democratic Party. That's a fact. So why wouldn't I believe him? Because he has a track record of fighting for Americans, a track record of making sure that the North American Free Trade Agreement was renegotiated that also included China trying to use Mexico in order to pour parts and content and insight and information and understanding and all of the things that they want to push as far as propaganda, and also removing your jobs from the United States of America. They were going to push it up through Mexico. They had already been doing it the entire time. Pushing it up through Mexico. Pushing it up through Mexico. And so he also renegotiated the North American Free Trade Agreement to make sure that it was fair for Americans. But let's hear what he got to say.
The tariffs do two things. Number one, they bring in tremendous amounts of money, and they let you keep your jobs here. China used them for years, very successfully. They said if an American company wants to come and build a plant in China, there's no tariff. Same thing with me. If somebody wants to come build a plant and hire our auto workers, I like it. There's no tariff to be paid.
It's always been like that, but because people don't understand the manufacturing policies over in China, did y'all know that Tesla, even though all of y'all jobs were shipped over there by the Clinton administration, the Clinton administration was the architect of shipping your jobs overseas, neither here nor there. Did y'all know that Tesla was the first American company that did not have to share proprietary technology that China would then steal and then use it for their own companies, which gave them the leg up, but also that it was the first company that you didn't have to partner with a Chinese company in order to do business over there. Meanwhile, they've been shipping products and doing business over here for the entire time, for decades. The entire economy that you stood on, that your parents was benefited from, it was all based off of the idea that it was one-sided. And in order to try to keep costs down instead of keeping jobs here in the United States of America, which then increased wages naturally instead of artificially, like they doing over there in California, it was one-sided. So they could do business over here and then ship all of the profits back to China. But then if we wanted to do business over there, we had to give up our technology, show them what it is that we doing, teach them how to build our cars, teach them how to take our technology, and then also they taxed us on top of it, and we could not even participate unless we partnered 50-50 at least with a Chinese company in order to build up their own economy. That's crazy. That's crazy. That is a fact. That is an absolute positive fact. Do your research. Understand exactly how these Democrats sold y'all out, sold your jobs, and now you want to sit here and have a conversation about whether or not tariffs is going to make it more expensive. No, tariffs saved the steel industry. Tariffs saved the steel industry. And why is the steel industry so meaningful to me? Because I still got friends that work there because I used to work in the steel industry.
But China charges us hundreds. I mean, they charge us so much. Other countries are charging us tremendous tariffs. It's a way. Look at India. They said to Harley Davidson, you have a 200% tariff on a motorcycle. But if you build your plant in India, there's no tariff. So they go and they build a plant in India, and so many other things like that. Tariffs are good. They also are good for something else, power. When a country starts getting fresh, when they start saying we're going to attack another country and you don't want them to, and you say, I'm sorry, if you do that, we're going to put tariffs on you, and, we're going to put tariffs. Do you know how many wars I stopped? Do you know that I had no wars? We had no wars. Remember when Hillary Clinton said, look at him, just look at him? Well, they looked at me, and the fact is that we had no wars other than I defeated ISIS, which had already started 100%.
We're going to get to foreign policy in a minute, but I just want to stay on this. The number one issue is the economy. Gas-powered cars. What happens to them in a Harris administration?
In a Harris, they're gone. In a Trump, they're thriving. And also, everything's thriving. Electric, gas-powered. Electric is 7%, 6% of the market. Maybe it's going to go a little bit higher. They want everybody to have an electric car.
Union jobs in Detroit.
Union jobs are going to come back. The unions are going to be, what's threatening to the union? Millions of people coming in and willing to work for a very small amount of money.
Wait a minute. We actually have somebody that's speaking to the real issues of Americans? Tariffs, jobs, foreign policy, whether or not immigrants is going to affect what it is that you're doing because they're able to do it for a much lower wage. Gas-powered cars, which you guys have argued with me on this platform and said, Anton, we want options. We don't want it to be forced on us. And so he's speaking facts. He's actually citing data and statistics. It is a statistical fact that electric vehicles, even though I like them and I like both, electric vehicles is only 6 to 7% of the sales of cars and vehicles in the United States of America. And people want the ability to be able to choose between both. I don't really understand why we can't get the Harris administration. Ain't that sound crazy? It sounds crazy to even say Harris administration. We can't get her to speak on anything. He's citing data. He's talking tariffs. He's talking foreign policy. He's talking about why he never had any more wars, how to leverage power in order to control what's going on in the best interest of Americans, jobs, electric powered vehicles, how the UAW and unions are going to benefit as a result of it. This is the kind of stuff that we want to have a conversation about. We don't want twerking. We don't want twerking. I don't want blouses and twerking. I want to actually hear people speak to the issues of why you will then be able to afford to live the life that you then want to live, which is basically the American dream. It's not about a handout. It's about opportunity. It's not a handout. It's opportunity.
The unions are under threat. I'll tell you who's hurt the most by the border. Black people, Hispanic people, and unions.
And young people going into the workforce for the first time.
Young people, too. But if you think about it, black people are losing jobs. They were doing so much better under Trump. People are coming in and undercutting them and taking their jobs. Hispanic people and also unions and young people.
The real wages under your administration, even the Washington Post had to report this, that I believe the number is you had a 19% differential between wages and inflation. Right. And with Biden, it's just, it's basically barely keeping up. It's improved a little bit. It's barely keeping up with inflation. I think yours was 15.4%, but it's a big differential. So real wages were going up. So why is that the case? So people are trying to figure this out. Like, why? What you did it work? Why?
So I had no inflation. Essentially, I had 1%. I had no inflation.
Over the whole 4 years. With that,
over the whole thing,
though.
I had very little inflation. Inflation is a country buster. It broke up Germany decades ago. Every country that has, and we have worse inflation than anybody, it is a country buster. Biden had inflation. They say it's 22%. It's much more than that.
Prices
they don't
are
add
up average 19% under Biden. So to families that are watching this,
it's actually much more than that, though.
But on overall,
they're using things that didn't go up that much. They don't talk about interest rates that went from 2% to 10%, and you can't get
Which goes
money.
to homes, Mr. President.
Right.
Young people are seeing the American dream disappear. So there's a youth differential right now. There's a youth gap in the polls. But what do you say to young people who say, I'm just going to give up on buying a house? That's not, I'll rent for the rest of my life.
Isn't this what y'all want? Don't y'all want to be able to buy a house? And that's how they manipulate the numbers. They manipulate the numbers when it comes to inflation in order to make it seem like it's not as bad as it really is. But when you go to the grocery store, it's 10 times worse. The reason why they're able to do it, and he explained it, but it went over a lot of people's heads. But let me add the additional context. It's almost like wages, right? When you have a conversation, you say, hey, what's the average household income, or what's the average income of a person or of the black community or whatever like that, right, in a particular city? And they say, well, in Miami, right, the average household income is, or in Florida, is somewhere around $67,000 to $70,000 a year, right? But it's actually significantly lower for those that are in the middle class, because there's so many millionaires and billionaires that live there that it skews the number up significantly, which is the same equation that goes into how it is that they calculate inflation. And so what will happen is real inflation, which is your ability to be able to put gas in your car, pay your rent, pay your house note, interest rates, go to the grocery store, do the things that everyday Americans do, is not even commensurate with how high inflation really is or what they're advertising, even though it's through the roof. You know why? Because they then skew the numbers down significantly by throwing a bunch of little insignificant things that's not even really meaningful to your life in order to make sure that they average and balance that number down, right? So Biden's inflation, and the reason why y'all looked at it and y'all said, well, inflation is high, but I'm still suffering significantly more than I would be if I really took that into consideration, because real inflation based off of how you live your life and according to whatever it is that you do on an individual basis is much greater, much, much greater than what it is that they're advertising to you as far as the Fed, which they then use that in order to tamp down inflation, which is one of the reasons why interest rates are so high. And your credit cards, your financing, your HELOCs, your mortgages, they're all at an all-time high in your lifetime, because the true cost of living has significantly exploded, and they don't want to really take that into consideration, while prices is also going up at the same time. Home prices haven't fallen. You know what's going up? Because home prices haven't fallen and interest rates haven't fallen, they went up, and foreclosures have also, and evictions, and repossessions. Foreclosures, evictions, repossessions are up. Prices aren't down. Wages are down or flat. Layoffs are up. And people is getting their cars took. They can't afford to breathe. They can't afford to breathe. And so when you really start to understand the policy, Democrats are afraid of people like me. They're deathly afraid of people like me. They will never face me. You will never, ever see any Democrat invite me over to their platform. These large Democrats, I will wash Amanda Seals. And I know that she don't even consider herself a Democrat. She considers herself an independent. But on any issue, black community, structure, homes, relationships, inflation, money, financial responsibility, insight and understanding on playing into the identity politics of whether or not it affects us really in the United States of America, and whether or not you black and how that's insignificant when it comes to the fact that this is really a class war, I will absolutely wash any of your favorite content creators, your favorite thought leaders, any of the Van Lathens, any of the Don Lemons. I will absolutely destroy them. I will make them look so bad. I will embarrass your favorite thought leader, your favorite rapper, your favorite singer, your favorite content creator, your favorite politician. They will be embarrassed in the worst way. You know what? I can get any person on here. I can get some of the most famous people on here that got 20 million, 30 million followers on Instagram. I can fly them right in, interview them right on that black couch. But you know who won't interview with me? You know who won't sit on these couch with me? Politicians. Politicians. They will never, ever, ever sit on this couch. They will never do a live stream with me because it will be an embarrassment. I will take down and destroy everything they built up in their career. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to debate me either. I wouldn't want to debate. Who want to debate a person that understands money and how it plays into politics and whether or not your inflation is really what it is and what your wages really are and how it is that you're running in the Victim Olympics with a person that's well-versed like me? And I'm just a C student. Imagine if I actually paid attention in school. Imagine if I actually paid attention in school. I scare you. I scare you, and I understand. And the worst thing about it is that they can't even go back and pick apart my background because I'm actually a reflection of what you should be in your community. So when they talk about blackity black, but they're not even married to a black woman, what does that mean?
I say very simply, vote for Trump. Interest rates are coming down. Energy's coming down. You're going to be able to buy a home again. You can't buy a home. You know, one of the things killing home building is regulation. There's so many regulations from the federal government on a home. It's a big percentage of the cost of the home itself. Young people are going to be able to buy again. They're going to be able to borrow again. They're going to be able
Biden says he's going to have rent control, cap it at 5% rents. And I imagine Harris would agree with that.
Once you do that,
then how come they didn't already do it? But no, neither here nor there.
You end up in a depression. We'll end up in a depression like in 1929.
Listen, bro. Listen. I guarantee you. And the thing that y'all need to really understand is that the reason why we call it the Democratic plantation is because they've tied you to the federal government in order for you to even be able to survive. So now the reason that the American dream is gone is because you don't have no option but to depend on them in order for you to actually even be able to put food in your mouth. That's why it's called a plantation. It's because you don't truly break out to become free. You have to depend on it in order to survive because you've tied yourself to it. Meanwhile, people are getting rich off the fact that you've now become a part of whatever it is that they think makes sense in order to fill their pocketbooks. Don't you know that immigration into this country is basically a play for people that then support the Democratic Party to continue to profit off of you and to leverage the fact that you're under duress in order to maintain power? The whole idea behind the Republican Party is that they want to give you the tools to do it yourself. You should have the opportunity to do it without so many barriers to entry. And our thought leaders and our mothers and our fathers sold us on the idea that, and this was the simplest explanation that they gave us when we was younger. They said, well, Republicans are for rich people and Democrats are for the poor. Thank God for removing the scales from our eyes. Thank God for removing the scales from our eyes. It's crazy. Crazy.